Chapter 5 of Zhang Henshui's Golden Pink Family. Spring clothes were raised for relatives, and brocade boxes were collected. The get-togethers gathered together and sat on the bus together. Song Runking visited Yanxi. It was like adding a golden color to the white silk, which was very beautiful. He clapped his hands all the way from the outside, and came in with a smile. Sure enough, I have good eyesight. This Jin Qi is really a young and mature man. He told me that we have the same smell. From then on, we are friends. With such a friend, it won't be a problem to find trouble. He shook his head a few times. When Mrs. Leng saw her, she said, "This is the first time for my second brother to come to someone else's place. Why did he sit there for so long?" Song Runking said, "Why don't I know? But he kept staying with me, so I had to sit for a while longer." Shook his head and said, "He wants to study poetry with me. If I accept such a disciple, I will never close my eyes until death." Except for his father. His eldest brother is in the diplomatic agency. His second brother is in the salt affairs agency. The third brother is in the transportation agency, which is a good way out. I haven't asked which agency he is in. He is probably in a good place. He is also very kind, and has no young master's temper. He is a young man who walks on the road. Seeing his brother so happy, he didn't stop him. In the morning of the next day, the servant over there asked at the gap in the wall whether my uncle was at home, and our seventh master was coming to visit. Song Runking was opening the door to go to the yamen. When he heard this, he quickly returned to the yard. He promised, "I don't dare to take it. I haven't gone out yet." After saying that, he asked Han Guangji to clean up the small guest room quickly, and asked Han Ma to boil water and buy cigarettes. He sat in the guest room first and waited for the guests to come in. However, Yanxi was not as polite as him. He just stepped over from the wall and walked into the yard, coughing first. Song Runking stretched out his head and looked around. He had already walked into the courtyard and bowed deeply to him as a respectful greeting. Yanxi smiled and said, "I'm not very respectful. I came over the wall." Song Runking also laughed and said, "This way I can be more informal." At that time, he led Yanxi to the living room and tried his best to deal with it for a while. Later, when they talked about writing poems, they invited Yanxi to the study and brought out the collections of poems hidden at home one by one for Yanxi to read. Yanxi only fooled around with him for a while and then went back. In the morning of the next day, Yanxi suddenly sent a banquet over. He called the footman over and said, "Originally, I wanted to invite Mr. Song and Mrs. Leng over there to be respectful. But the newly moved here are all careless footmen, who don't know how to entertain, so I'm sorry for sending this table over. I can't accompany you anymore." Song Runking quickly checked the banquet and saw that it was a full banquet of top-quality shark fins. This year is the new year. Although I have had to banquets, participated in a funeral once, and had plain wine again, there is no such richness. Looking at the banquet, there were also 2 bottles of wine. One was 3-star brandy and the other was wine, which was just right for the taste. At first sight, I can't help but salivate. At that time, she said to Mrs. Leng's sister, "Do you know what this means?" "This is the apprenticeship wine he prepared." Mrs. Leng felt that what he said was right, and said, "Since they respect us like this, second brother should. Teaching people how to write poems is the way to go." Song Runking said, "Of course, I also plan to teach him poetry well, and meet his father." Qingqiu listened to it, but he was amused in his heart. "What kind of poet is your uncle? That man's surname Jin is really blind, so he respects him so much." Song Runking was extremely happy, thinking that Yanxi admired his knowledge, so he tried his best to contact him, so he simply accepted it calmly. But Mrs. Leng thought about it, and felt a little uncomfortable after receiving such heavy gifts from others twice. "I wanted to return the gift for a while, but I didn't know what to give in return. Then it suddenly occurred to me that most of the moving gifts some people give to others are furnishings, elephants, calligraphy, paintings, and antiques. There are still flowers and birds embroidered in 4 directions at home, and since they look good, I'm not willing to sell them, so why not give them to him? But all of a sudden, it didn't fit the glass frame, so it didn't look good. If I wait to get a glass frame, I'm afraid today will be over." After hesitating for a while, he decided to ask Mother Han to send this thing over, saying that it was embroidered by himself and asking Mr. Jin Qi to repair the wall randomly. After making up my mind, I told Mother Han this. He found a piece of floral cloth, wrapped the 4 embroidered flowers, and asked Mother Han to send them away. When the footman over there heard that something was coming, he quickly sent it to Yanxi's house. By this time, the room had been tidied up, and Yanxi was lying on the sofa with her legs crossed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about something. I heard that an old woman from the Leng family had arrived with something. I immediately stood up and opened the bag, and saw that it was 4 pieces of Hunan embroidery. Seeing this, I felt very happy at first. Then he said to the footman, "Call that old woman here. I have something to say to her." The footman called Han's mother in. She had met Yanxi once, so she naturally recognized her, so she made a greeting to Yanxi. Yanxi said, "Mrs. Leng is too polite. This is a very precious thing. Mother Han is honest and can't speak." She said truthfully, "It's nothing. Our Lady embroidered it herself. Just don't think it's rough." Yanxi was overjoyed when she heard that it was made by Leng Qingqiu. He immediately called Jin Rong over and rewarded Mother Han with $4 in cash. These women who work as domestic helpers hate to see others reward them with small sums of money, and they will smile when they see them. If you reward her with money, she will just be happy, but when she sees the foreign money, she thinks it is real money, and she smiles from the bottom of her heart to her face. Now Han's mother gets a handful of yuan for doing some trivial things, something she never dreamed of doing. This happiness was forgotten by the dynasty, and he quickly lay down on the ground and kowtowed to Yanxi. After getting up, he went to ask for a greeting. Yanxi said, "You go back and thank my wife. I'll come back in a day or 2 to thank you." Mother Han said, "Don't thank me for the rough work." Yanxi said, "That's what I mean. You must tell me." Mother Han said, "Yes, I will definitely tell you." Then she went back happily. Yanxi looked at the 4 directions of Hunan embroidery again and felt that it was really good. I thought to myself, there are some people in my family who can embroider, but from spring to winter, who is willing to hold a needle? The second sister-in-law, Cheng Huiqing, talks all about women living an independent life. I saw that a button of her dress was taken off, and she had to sew it up. Paifeng has been clamoring for an embroidery competition, but it has been half a year and she still hasn't touched the needle. Miss Leng is always available at home. Who among our family members can catch up with her? The more he thought about it, the happier he became, and he only thought about what was going his way. Could it be that Miss Leng already knows what I mean? Otherwise, why would you give me something you embroidered by yourself? He immediately cut the paper into a shape, sent Zhang Shun to get the frames for the glasses, and asked the driver to drive to Chengmi Silk and Satin Factory. This silk and satin shop used to have dealings with the Jin family, and 60 to 70% of their family members recognized it. As soon as Yanxi entered the door, 3 or 4 of his friends came to him with smiles on their faces and said, "Master Qi is here. Why is Miss Bai not here?" Then they gathered around him and went upstairs. 2 friends who were old businessmen of the Jin family knew that Yanxi liked the excitement, so they brought the bright red and green silk material to Yanxi to see. Yanxi said, "Why do you always bring out such gorgeous materials? I want something cleaner." After hearing this, the waiter said, "Yes, plain clothes are also fashionable now." So he moved a lot of plain clothes and put them on Yanxi's table, in front of the West. Yanxi chose 1 piece of lotus-colored Indian silk material, 1 piece of azure-colored brocade material, and 1 piece each of navy blue floral damask and light gray spring crepe. After thinking about it for a while, I picked out 2 more pieces in crimson and green. The friend asked, "These are all for single women's clothes. Nowadays, plain clothes are very fashionable with embroidered braids. Do you want Master Qi?" Yanxi said, "It's just embroidered braids. How can you be popular with people like that?" The friend didn't know why, so he said with a smile, "Show it to Mr. Qi, it's good." Yanxi said, "Honestly, if you show something like yours to others, they will definitely burst into laughter." Yes. The friend in the silk shop hit a nail for no reason, and he didn't know what to say, so he could only say with a smile, "Yes, yes." Yanxi didn't ask how much it was, and just put the payment in his own name. Then we took the car and went home. When Jin Rong saw that he had bought a lot of silk and satin, he had already guessed it. They chatted and put the silk material on the table into the closet, and then asked, "Should I ask Lao Shang from Hangzhou or Aji from Suzhou to cut it?" Yanxi said, "No, I will give it away." Jin Rong said, "Master Qi bought so much good silk material, he must have given it to the young lady from that house." It's too unseemly to just deliver it to someone else, one on the left and one on the right. Yanxi said, yes. Do you think how to deliver it? What? Jin Rong said, I think it would be nice to just fold the materials together and put them in a glass box, which is respectful and beautiful. Yanxi said, these silks, I need a big box to put it in. Where can I find this glass box? Jin Rong asked. Did Mr. Qi forget it? Last month, the third concubine made 2 carved sandalwood glass boxes. Jin Rong brought them back. At that time, Mr. Qi asked what it was for. Why don't we borrow it? Yanxi said, I'm afraid I can't borrow it. She keeps it in the hairdressing room. Jin Rong said, if Mr. Qi writes a note, I think it will be done. Yanxi said, what if she asks? Jin Rong said with a smile, of course you lied and said it was just for show. Why don't you do it anyway? Isn't it a gift? Yanxi said, okay, let's give it a try, and immediately wrote a note to Jin Rong. The note was, Aunt Kui, I forgot about the things I asked to buy the day before yesterday and couldn't do it. I'm very sorry. Because it's been a lot of fun running the poetry club these 2 days, and I won't be back until tomorrow. I would like to borrow the 2 glass boxes you have at your place. Please bring them to me. Aki's gift. Yanxi said to Jin Rong again, if you want to go back quickly, just drive my car. Otherwise, it will be too late. Jin Rong agreed, immediately drove Yanxi's car and returned to the mansion. Huma, who was looking for Aunt Kui's orders, asked her to pass the note in. This Huma is from Suzhou. She is only in her 20s. She has a darker face, watery eyes, and glutinous teeth, but she is the most coquettish. The servants of the Jin family called her Hu's family in front of her, and called her sexy eldest sister behind her back. There was no one who didn't like to play with her. Even when she scolded, people said she could scold well in Suzhou dialect, and they were happy for her to scold. Mother Hu took the note and asked, I haven't seen you for several days. Where have you been? Jin Rong smiled and said, I can't tell you. Mother Hu said, it's not a good place anyway. If it is a good place, why not tell someone? Jin Rong said with a smile, it's not a good place, but you and I are not related, and you can't interfere in my private affairs. If you are willing to interfere, I would really like you to take care of it. Li Delu, a footman next to him, was holding a spoon and pouring water into the food jar next to the parrot stand under the corridor. When he heard about it, he said, Brother Jin, you two are exchanging 1 whip for 2 maces, half a catty for 8 taels. Otherwise, I will drink you to a bowl of winter melon soup. Huma said, you chew maggots blindly, say what? What does it mean to drink winter melon soup? Li Delu said, I don't know if I drink winter melon soup. This is a Beijing dialect. If the fight is serious, you have to ask the peacemaker to talk to you. Let's drink winter melon soup. Huma said, then he and I will treat you to some winter melon soup. Jin Rong couldn't help laughing, but Li Delu made a face and pinched his left eye. They were joking with Ma Hu here, and an older footman behind them said, don't get scolded. He keeps saying this to the higher-ups. He says you are bullying people from other provinces. Ma Hu knew from the look on their faces. Drinking winter melon soup will not be a good word. Then he asked the old attendant, how do they scold me? Jin Rong smiled and said, Delu wants to play matchmaker with you. When Huma heard about it, she snatched the spoon from Li Delu's hand and saw that there was still half a spoon in it. Water poured on Jin Rong. Jin Rong flashed and splashed all over the waiter. Huma yelled, threw the spoon, and ran in. She went to Aunt Kui's room and presented the note. Aunt Kui took a look and said, call Jin Rong in. I have something to ask him. Hu's mother called Jin Rong over, and he stood outside the glass window under the corridor. Aunt Kui asked, what are Master Qi doing outside now? Why haven't you come back for today's? Jin Rong said, they set up some kind of poetry club with a group of friends. Aunt Kui said, who are they? Answer, they are all old classmates of Mr. Qi. Is it just writing poetry? Is there anything else? Answer, nothing else. Aunt Kui took the note and asked again, what are you borrowing the glass box for? The answer, I want to make one like this. Ask, what can I put in the glass box? Jin Rong was not prepared for this question, and he casually replied, maybe it's to put paper, pen, and ink stones. Aunt Kui said, how could they be filled with paper, pens, and inkstones? Are you talking nonsense? Aunt Kui made a wild guess, but Jin Rong's face changed after hearing this. He smiled and said, How could anyone give me 2 boxes like this? Aunt Kui said, I let you take them, but they will be returned to me tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. This is what I am waiting to use. As she said, he asked Ma Hu to free up the glass box and let Jin Rong take it. Jin Rong slowly walked out of the screen door, quickly picked up the glass box and got into the car. Like a gust of wind, he arrived at Quanquan Alley. Yanxi was very happy to see that he had borrowed the glass box. He immediately opened the silk materials and placed them in the glass box one by one. After putting it away, I asked Jin Rong to take it to the next door. Jin Rong said, it's getting dark now, so it's not easy to send gifts at this time. Yanxi said, it's not 10 miles away. Why can't we send them? Jin Rong said, that's not to say, there is no way to send gifts at night. Why not? I'll send it to you early tomorrow morning. Yanxi thought about it, and it didn't seem very generous to send it to her at night. Moreover, they don't have electric lights at home. These bright colors will not make them happy at first sight, and it will also reduce a lot of fun. But if I want to deliver it tomorrow, I have to be late after 3 o'clock. Because I wanted to make that person happy when I delivered it, but that person was not at home before 3 o'clock. After hesitating for a while, I thought it would be better to send it off tomorrow, so I had to put it down. The next day, after breakfast, he asked Zhang Shun to find out whether Miss Leng next door had gone to school and when she would be back. Zhang Shun was very embarrassed to receive such an assignment. He thought, I am asking for trouble if I ask about other young ladies' movements for no reason. However, Yanxi's temper is that he will not allow you to come back without results after asking you to do something. He had no choice but to stand quietly at the gap in the wall and wait for the opportunity. It was a pity that it took a long time to wait for someone. After a long time, no one came out of the wall, and he could not go straight to ask, so he was very anxious. He thought that waiting forever was not a solution, so he had to go back inside and lied that he had gone to school and would not be back until 4 o'clock. Yanxi could not wait any longer, so he pretended to visit Song Runking and asked in person. When he walked to the gap in the wall, the other party had already blocked most of the broken door, so he went back disappointed. He finally waited until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he could not wait any longer, so he asked Jin Rong to send the things over. In fact, Leng Qingqiu had returned early in the morning. At this time, she and her mother were picking up the gifts. Seeing the silk fabrics which were dazzling, she said, why did they give us such a valuable gift again? Han Ma was standing by, praising them one by one. She said, isn't it because we gave 4 pieces of embroidery yesterday, and this is a gift in return? Mrs. Leng said, we are giving him a gift in return. If this continues, how long will it last? Leng Qingqiu said, then we won't accept his gift. Mrs. Leng said, didn't you see someone wearing a lotus-colored Qian Sam, and say it was very beautiful? I thought I would keep this fabric and make you a long gown. If I were to buy this from you, I wouldn't have the spare money. Now I have it ready. If I return it to someone, you will be worried about it for a few days. Han Ma, bring me a ruler. Let me measure it to see if it is enough or not. When she found the ruler and measured it, it was just enough for a gown. Qingqiu took the silk fabric and hung it in front of her chest to compare it. Before she could say anything, Han Ma praised it endlessly, saying, it's really beautiful, really pretty. Qingqiu smiled and said, next month, a classmate is getting married. I'll make a dress out of this to wear to the wedding. Mrs. Leng said, since it's to celebrate someone's wedding, the lotus-colored one is a bit plain, so let's keep the green one. Qingqiu smiled and said, it's better to keep both. I think it's not too much for us to accept 2. Mrs. Leng said, I want to keep 1 too. If you keep 2, I can't keep them. Qingqiu said, Mom, if you want to keep 1, just keep 1. Let's keep half and return the other half. Mrs. Leng said, that's fine, but which one should I keep? After discussing for a while, they agreed on all of them. Mrs. Leng smiled and said, in that case, we'll accept all of them and don't have to return them. Qingqiu said, why should we accept such a big gift? Of course, it's better to return it. As a result, they wrapped 2 pieces of money and kept the lotus-colored and green silk. Who knew that when Han Ma took out the things, the person who delivered them had already left. So she asked Han Guanji to take a long detour and deliver it through the main gate. After a while, the things were brought back, but the money was not accepted. The servants on their side said that the 7th master had ordered that rewards were not allowed, so they dared not accept the money. Mrs. Leng said, "Qingqiu, what do you think? He must give it to us, so we should accept it." Qingqiu fell in love with these silks and was eager to accept them all. However, because she felt it was inconvenient to accept such a large gift, she advocated returning half of it. Now that her mother said to accept it, of course she agreed. She smiled and said, "We will accept it. But how should we return the gift?" Mrs. Leng said, "We'll have to talk about that later." So Qingqiu took the silks one by one into the closet, leaving only 2 empty glass boxes. Qingqiu said, "Mom, smell it. How fragrant is this box?" Mrs. Leng smiled and said, "Yes. It must have been used to hold spices and given to people. If you smell the materials, you will find that they have some fragrance. Rich people always pay attention to everything they bring out. This box is so exquisite." Qingqiu smiled and said, "I think Master Jin is a bit girlish. Just look at the box he uses, it doesn't look like one a man would use." As they were talking, Song Runking came. He said, "Oh, how can we accept such a valuable gift? Anyway, we have to give them some gifts in return." Mrs. Leng said, "What should we give them in return?" "I can't remember." Song Runking said, "Of course it has to be valuable. I'll find 2 poetry collections in my bookcase and send them over later." Mrs. Leng said, "Unless that's the case, there's nothing else in our house that they would be interested in except these." The next day, Song Runking picked up a copy of Qingqiu collection and a copy of Suiyuan collection, put them in a glass box and sent them over. Song Runking meant that these were 2 very good editions, and his elder brother had annotated them in fine calligraphy. He really spared no expense to save others, and it was not just a gift. But Yanxi did not even look at it, and asked the servant to put it on the bookshelf. He thought to himself, "The silk material has been sent, but I don't know when she will wear it, and when can I see her wearing it? What if she doesn't make clothes for a while?" He thought about it, clapped his hands and laughed, saying, I got it, I have an idea." He immediately asked Jin Rong to call the grand stage and ask them to send 2 first-class box tickets. The 2 boxes must be connected together. If they are not connected, they will not be used. After a while, the accountant of the grand stage delivered the box tickets. Yanxi saw that they were indeed connected, and he was very happy. The next day, he came to talk about poetry with Song Runking and said that it was a box ticket given by someone, and he couldn't go to see it alone, so he gave it to Mrs. Leng inside. "This play is rare, but you can go and see it." Song Runking took the box ticket and saw that it was a good show that had been advertised in the newspapers. He took the box ticket and went in to tell Mrs. Leng. Mrs. Leng heard that the young master of the Jin family had come, and considering the repeated politeness of the family, she used 4 plates to serve 4 dishes of dry snacks. Yanxi said, "You are so polite. I won't come here often in the future. We are separated by a wall, and we often visit each other. Why do we have to go through all this trouble? It's just that you blocked the wall here. Otherwise, we can still go in and out through the same door." Wang Desheng, who is in charge of the house, is very lazy. I told him a long time ago to repair the wall as soon as possible, but he kept doing it, day by day, until now. Song Runking said, "It doesn't matter. We get along well with each other. What's the point of suspicion? In my opinion, it's best to open a door so that we can talk often and avoid taking a big detour." Yanxi said, "Great. Let's do it that way. I can learn a lot." This was what he said on the first day. On the second day, Wang Desheng brought masons and bricklayers to repair the door in the wall. The door opened from there to this side, just like an inner courtyard here. After the door was opened, Yanxi often invited Song Runking to have a simple meal, and he would send food and entertainment to this side from time to time. Mrs. Leng felt bad to see Yanxi being so polite and courteous. Sometimes Yanxi came here and they met by chance and talked for a few words, and they became more familiar with each other. Time flies, and 3 days passed in a blink of an eye, and only 1 day was left until the day of the play. Qingqiu had already asked the tailor to make the lotus-colored silk material a few days ago, and it was made a day earlier. On this night, Yanxi told Song Runking that there was no need to hire a car, and he could ask his car to deliver it. Song Runking agreed without getting Mrs. Leng's consent. He went in and said to Mrs. Leng, "We are really going to have a great day today. Jin Yanxi lent us his car again." Han Ma smiled and said, "I haven't ridden in a car yet. I want to try something new today." Qingqiu said, It's not a big deal to ride in a car, but it's much more convenient to come back in the middle of the night without hiring a car. Mrs. Leng didn't want to ride in someone else's car, but now that they all agreed, she didn't object. After dinner, Yanxi's car had already parked at the door. After getting in the car, they arrived at the entrance of the big stage in a short while. Yanxi was even more attentive in his hospitality, and had sent Jin Rong to wait at the entrance. When he saw them arrive, he led them to the upstairs box. The handguard on the railing was filled with dry and wet fruit plates, cigarettes, and teacups. The waiter in the theater thought they were from the Jin family and was doubly flattering. After watching a play, Yanxi also came and sat in the next box. Mrs. Leng and Song Runking saw him and hurried to greet him. Yanxi nodded to everyone here with a smile on his face. Qingqiu thought that people were polite in every way and could not ignore it, so he stood up and nodded. Yanxi was really happy to see Qingqiu bowing to him. Although his eyes were facing the stage, he ignored whether the red face or the white face appeared on the stage. Mrs. Leng and Qingqiu did not understand the play very well, so they asked Song Runking from time to time. Mr. Song was a person who did not go to the theater more than 3 times a year. Although he knew the story on the stage, he could not tell what the actors sang. Later, the stage was performing Yu Tang Chun, and the young female actor sang in a babbling voice, which was simply incomprehensible. He knew the plot of the play, but unfortunately, he did not know what to sing. Yanxi could not help it. Before the stage sang, Yanxi told Song Runking the words of the play, pretending to take the harp and sing so that he could hear it. Mrs. Leng and her daughter first understood the words of the play, and then listened to the singing of the young female actor on the stage. It was indeed very interesting. They did not speak until the play was finished. Because they found this play interesting, they could not help asking Song Runking about various actions on the stage. Asking Song Runking meant asking Yanxi, so Yanxi answered all the questions. Later, the stage was performing Borrowing the East Wind, and a man was seen holding a black cloth flag and waving it across the stage. Qingqiu said, "Uncle, what does this mean?" Song Runking said, "This is a soldier passing a signal." Qingqiu said, "No, that man has a tuft of yellow hair on his head, like a monster." Song Runking laughed and said, "Don't talk nonsense. Where are the monsters in the romance of the 3 kingdoms?" Yanxi saw that both of them were wrong, and smiled at Song Runking and said, "It's not a monster, but it's almost like a monster." Song Runking said, "How is it almost like a monster?" "Of course it's not a fairy. Is it a ghost?" Yanxi said, "It's not a fairy nor a ghost. It represents a gust of wind blowing past. If you have to say what it is, you can't point it out. This is the mystery of the old play." Qingqiu laughed when she heard it. Yanxi was even happier when she saw her smile, and he started to criticize the play. Although the two of them didn't talk directly at this time, they couldn't help but say a few words, intentionally or unintentionally. When the play was about to reach a critical point, Yanxi wanted to leave. Song Runking said, "This is such a good show. Why do you want to leave?" Yanxi said, "I want to take the car first and come back to pick you up." Song Runking said, "Why bother? We can all take this car back. Your car is big and can accommodate everyone." Mrs. Leng said, "Yes, let's go back together. It's so late at night. Why should we ask the driver to go another trip?" Yanxi said, "It's very crowded." Song Runking looked and said, "There are 5 people in total, not too many." Seeing him say that, Yanxi really watched the show to the end. After a while, Qingqiu and Han Ma sat in the back seat of the car. Yanxi said, "Don't be polite, Miss Leng, please sit in the upper seat." Qingqiu said, "No, it's the same here." Yanxi refused to get in the car and insisted that she sit in the front. So Qingqiu, Mrs. Leng and Song Runking sat in a row. Han Ma sat opposite Qingqiu, and Yanxi sat opposite Song Runking. Song Runking said with a smile, "Brother Yanxi, this is probably the first time you sit in the back seat of a car." Yanxi said, "No, I have sat in it before." As he spoke, he pressed the light on the ceiling, and the light came on. Qingqiu felt a little embarrassed to have a stranger sitting in front of her, and lowered her head to stroke her handkerchief. Yanxi saw that she was embarrassed, so he also lowered his head. At this moment, he saw Qingqiu's feet. Seeing that she was wearing a pair of black thread socks and a pair of crimson silk flat shoes, and they were 70% new, he couldn't help but feel sorry for her. She was wearing such a beautiful gown, but the shoes and socks were so makeshift, which was a bit imperfect. In just this thought, he decided to solve this problem with her. Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.